URC final Saturday, Leinster against the Bulls at Croke Park. 40,000 now expected to come through the gates. It's a 5 o'clock kickoff on RTE and Premier Sports. Our rugby coverage, as ever, is with thanks to Energia. They sponsor rugby in Ireland at all levels at grassroots. The Energia AIL. They are the official energy partner to Leinster Connacht and the Irish men's and women's teams, and their Rugby for All initiative welcomes everyone of all abilities to participate in the game. If you want to learn more about their exclusive home energy offer for rugby fans, you can visit energia.ie/rugby. I should say as well, next Friday, it will creep up on us. The Lions will play their first ever match on Irish soil against Argentina in Dublin, June 20th. Appropriate glamour and glitz to kick things off for Andy Farrell and friends. Keane Tracy currently in Portugal with the Lions all week. We'll chat to him later on in the show. First, though, gracing us with his presence. We are honoured, Ian Madigan. Wow.
Well, I put the curse on us in the Six Nations when I came into studio for the French game. Hopefully I don't do it for Leinster this week. But yeah, great to be in studio, and what a season it's been.
You target big games, as they just say, just circle it in the calendar as I need to go in studio that week?
I always think it provides a better show. There's it's one thing being on Zoom, but I think when you can see when the other people are going to speak, and that kind of social interaction always provides a better show, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, sadly it's just me and you today, so it's been wasted. The first thing Ian said when he walked in, is it just me and you? Yeah, it is. So you could have done it on Zoom.
Yeah, where's Rudd?
He was on earlier in the week. That's why we let him off. So we were talking Leinster a bit on bits and bobs. We actually had a big discussion, which we won't rehash now, but off the back of Joe McCarthy, everyone loves to hate Leinster. Do they? And we agreed they do. Leinster 37, Glasgow 19. Let's use that as their jumping off point, because you were on with us previewing that game, which was straight after the Scarlets' quarter-final win. And the line I remember most from you that week was, having looked at the team against Scarlets, you thought, they've lost their buzz. And you said, that's actually a very big thing, and that worries me, and it's based on body language and player interaction and just general vibes. The sense is 37-19, 19 flattering Glasgow, they refound their buzz.
Yeah, and I think I was, looking back, I think I was right in saying they had lost their buzz. Where I was wrong, I didn't think they'd be able to get it back as quickly as they did. And full credit to Leo and the coaching team and the players for how they bought in. And even seeing Joe McCarthy's interview after the game, you get a sense that maybe there is a bit of a siege mentality with this Leinster squad at the moment. They feel a bit hard done by to have gone through the season only having lost 3 games. But then for the likes of myself saying, the season's a failure regardless of whether they win the league. And in hindsight, I think that was actually a bit unfair. And this group, they showed against Glasgow how motivated they are to win this competition. And I think it was the plan that they put in place and the buy-in that they got from the players against Glasgow that impressed me the most. And why I say I was right on them having lost their buzz, I felt that the desperation was back. The kick chase, diving on the balls on the ground, the kind of no talent efforts that you just take for granted that Leinster bring every week. And look, it is a long season. A lot of the players had gone through the autumn internationals and the Six Nations, and it's human nature. There's going to be a dip after a disappointment, but they've refound their mojo, and I have full confidence that they're going to get over the line this week.
I thought their psychology on Saturday after the game was really striking. Siege mentality, as you say. Almost hurt by the criticism, angry at the criticism, pretending they're not aware of the criticism. The whole offering was there in the post-match interviews. Joe McCarthy, everyone loves to hate Leinster, we know that. Jack Conan, in less strident terms, referred to the severity of the criticism they'd been receiving post-Northampton. Ryan Baird said he just woke up possessed that morning. I just have to perform today. And it struck me, they have very rarely in recent seasons been in this position, because generally they've lost URC semi-final stage and then Champions Cup final has been their last game of the season. Whereas this is the first time in a while they've had big games post-Champions Cup defeat, and there's kind of a bit of there's a real response to it. They're not often in this kind of dark place. They tend to lose the Champions Cup final, go away for the summer, it's out of the system, they've been on holiday, it's a new season, everyone's happy again. They're not happy right now.
Yeah, and I'm actually glad you said that about Ryan Baird. I bumped into him walking his dog the morning before the game.
He just walked right past you.
And he pretty much did. I was thinking, gee, I wonder if I said something about him recently in the media. But I managed to catch him briefly after the game, and yeah, he was like a man possessed, and that's what that siege mentality does, and like it's proven that can serve you through a quarter-final, semi-final, final. Is that the fuel that you want to be driving on for a season or 2 seasons? No. And like we've seen that, and more so probably in Gaelic football, interestingly.
It's a short, sharp shock.
Yeah, and I think the key for the coaches going into this Glasgow game was to give the players a blueprint to play off that was going to be easy for them to be able to show that the buzz was back and that the momentum was going to be back into their season. And the first passage of play, really good kickoff from Prendergast, excellent tackle. Tommy O'Brien comes in, poaches the ball, and you're thinking, what a dream start, and then it was even off that play. It was just so clear what the plan for the day was. It was get our best ball carriers on the ball as much as possible. Geordie Barrett carried the ball 3 or 4 times. Dan Sheehan, I think, carried it 5 times in that first passage of play. It was so simple. It was so attritional. They were so accurate at the breakdown. And that saw them through the full 80 minutes. They just simply ground Glasgow down with their carry game, with their accuracy at the breakdown. And then they were brilliant in the air. The quality of kicking, as always, from Gibson Park and Prendergast, it allowed the likes of James Lowe and Tommy O'Brien get up and create contests. And the Leinster players were just hungrier for the ball. They came up with it. They applied that field pressure. And then, obviously the way rugby goes, you get your opportunities to come back into the game. They just simply didn't let Glasgow breathe. They slowed down their breakdown, allowed their defence to get set. They got off the line and they just kept catching them behind the gain line. They really frustrated Glasgow, and like the contest was over really before half time.
Yeah. Not to go over old ground, I'm sure they're wondering the same thing. Where was that attitude first kick chase against Northampton, for instance, and a million other moments in that game? It's just eating away at Leinster fans, I would think. Where has this been? This anger, this spite. It's not like we were going for our 5th Champions Cup in a row and we were a little bit gluttonous. I mean, they should have been every bit as full of against Northampton.
Totally. And that's what keeps us coming back for sport, is that it's not just the team who has the best stats and who's the biggest wage bill. That's the team that's going to win. That's not how it works. You've got to turn up emotionally. You've got to be right on the day. And I think the Leinster coaching staff and players will look back on that and go, maybe we didn't get that right.
Oh, there's no question.
Maybe we were too measured.
Yeah.
Maybe we didn't dial it up enough. Maybe we were saving it for the final.
Yeah. Leo Cullen alluded to that more recently. We all kind of got started looking ahead, which is, again, a big admission. So with
I think
just
on that point as well, like it is important to note, right? You've got in around 30 games in a season. You cannot have the team amped up to the nines, ready to run through a brick wall every single week, because even that in itself, and like you build that up through the training week, the messages you're delivering, how the S&C staff could be executing the gym sessions, how you're motivating players one-on-one. You get to the pre-match talk and how you energize the group to literally go to war, right? You're not necessarily going to do that for Zebra on a rainy October night. You've got to keep your powder dry, that when you do go there and you go to that well, that it has a massive impact. And maybe they didn't use one of those bullets against Northampton. We'll never really know unless you're in that inner circle. But it did have the feeling on that day of guys were going out there to stick in the system, do your job, not necessarily go out and win this game, find a way.
Yeah. They've named their team for the Bulls on Saturday. Ringrose is back in. Josh van der Fleer is back in. Hugo Keenan didn't make it. Tyke Furlong didn't make it. So all that taken into account, and no Caelan Doris, obviously, it's still a very, very strong-looking team. Porter and Thomas Clarkson, he gets the nod either side of Sheehan. There was some talk with Slimani going in ahead of Clarkson, given the Bulls scrum, but it's Clarkson who gets the nod. Joe McCarthy and James Ryan, second row. And then Ryan Baird, who was player of the match last weekend, is at 6. Josh van der Fleer, like I say, is back in at 7. And Jack Conan goes at 8. It's Jameson Gibson Park with Sam Prendergast. Centres are Barrett and Ringrose. Wings, James Lowe, Tommy O'Brien. Fullback, Jimmy O'Brien. And then Slimani's on the bench, Jack Boyle on the bench, Keller, Orgy Snyman, Max Deegan, Luke McGrath, Ross Byrne, and then Jamie Osborne. Any qualms with that team?
No, it's a really good team. I think Gary coming back in, with getting the defensive system that Leinster runs, Gary's particularly well suited to it, getting high, whether he makes the tackles or not, how he influences the opposition attack. That is important against the Bulls. They're very good on counter-attack. So I was really impressed with Osborne at the weekend, and I think his best position is in the centre. And I thought there was a significant improvement in his performance from the Scarlets game to the Glasgow game, and you quite often get that because he's had an extra training week, another week working with Geordie Barrett. He would have just been more confident in himself, and I think his future for Leinster is going to be in the centre, and it was great to see him really step up in a big knockout game like that.
This rivalry with the Bulls then is very interesting. 2 knockout games in the URC have gone their way, 22 at the RDS, and then last year the semi-final, which we'll probably touch on, where they beat Leinster by 5. And Jake White was asked about those wins against Leinster. He was asked, are there any reoccurring themes? And he smiled and said, there are, but I'm not going to share them with you. And I think we're well aware of the Leinster psychology. It's worth touching on how the Bulls are seeing this match, because you talked about there when you choose to fire your bullets. They have been talking about this game for not weeks, but for months. So Jake White was talking, and he said, this one's been coming for 4 months because we felt it was inevitable that they were going to get first place. Nobody was going to catch Leinster. And so the question I've said to them this week is, that's his own players he's talking about, you've said you're going to beat Leinster away. Now let's see how good you are. It's D-Day for us. So for 4 months, back of their minds, Leinster away, D-Day. That's where they're coming from. That's a bit tasty as well.
It sure is, and full credit to Jake White. We're talking about getting guys ready to go to war and run through brick walls. He's the master at it. He knows how to motivate his teams, and the Bulls are really suited to them. They pride themselves on their physicality. They're not an overly creative attacking side. But they're defensively, they want to get up and they want to hit you. It's no coincidence that they make the most dominant tackles in the league. That's a great stat to have, because dominant tackles lead to turnovers or lead to penalties. Very different to the style of attack that Glasgow would have had at the weekend, where they're much more a team that stays connected. They want you to go multiple phases, tire yourselves out, make a mistake, and then Glasgow look to play on that turnover ball. Glasgow or the Bulls are very different. But what's fascinating about his comments there are rivalry, right? And this is a genuine rivalry. Why? Because the Bulls have beaten Leinster in the last 2 times they've met each other in knockout games. They've also beaten them in regular season games. What other teams have done that in recent times in the league? Like, you look at the Irish Shield or the Interpros this year. No one beat Leinster, home or away. So if that happens year on year, which it has happened with the biggest rivalry in Irish rugby of Leinster and Munster, at what point is it a big rivalry? You need teams to beat each other for it to be a genuine rivalry. Like last week against Glasgow, that is not a genuine rivalry. They've never beaten Leinster in a knockout game. More often than not, Leinster beat them in the regular season's game. I know they beat them at the start of the league last season. But Leinster crave rivalries. Everyone does. It gets bums on seats. And Jake White coming out and saying this is brilliant.
Yeah.
That's how we grow this game, not necessarily by the skullduggery that we saw in the Sharks game.
Both.
No, yeah. There's positives in both, but this one in particular, he's had this game lined up.
Yeah.
And the reason why he could do that is, how can there's obviously 8 or all the teams in the league. How do you beat Leinster? It actually doesn't matter how you beat Leinster. If you cannot match them physically, your strategy after that doesn't really matter. And the Bulls are the only side, in my opinion, that can truly match Leinster physically. And then it's like, okay, well, now that they've done that, how could they beat Leinster post that conversation. Glasgow weren't able to match Leinster physically at the weekend. All the other technical stuff around it didn't really matter.
Yeah, that's your starting point when you're talking about a game of rugby.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So physicality stakes, even or Bulls even a notch ahead of Leinster?
I think when you look at like their work in the tackle specifically, is really impressive. Like it's one thing saying we're going to go out and get impact tackles. A huge amount of work goes into that. Your tackle technique in training, how you're cueing guys inside and outside you. They need to know that he's going to go for a big one here, and there's a likelihood that he's going to miss. And how can I cover him versus working with a defender who's just going to make a passive tackle or look to get them to ground. They're not going to be beaten on a sixpence the same way that the players who are looking for the dominant tackle will. The work around the breakdown. If someone makes a dominant tackle and you're not ready to get in and counter ruck, there's not as much value in it. It's how you win that moment in the dominant tackle and then you back it up again. Jake White's driving that. The players are driving that. The likes of Marcel Coetzee, who I played with in Ulster, like he prides himself on those impact tackles, impact carries. So yeah, look, they do have that blueprint. Physically, their scrum work is really good. Like they really got on top last week. They'll back themselves in the maul. And then, look, the key guy is Willie le Roux in the back three. He's one of the most skillful rugby players to have ever played the game.
It's funny because when you talk about the Bulls and their game plan not being, intricate maybe, and there's an emphasis on the physicality stakes. My main memory of last year, and to be fair, physicality was a big part of it when they beat Leinster by 5 points, 25-20. But the main memory is Willie le Roux in the pocket, and if they came up with him, little short pop passes either side, and it was causing havoc. But the main memory a lot of people would have, those little pop passes out to the channels, and Leinster were badly exposed. They were, and then at that stage as well, there was a degree of, they've spent so much time working on this defensive system, they've neglected attack. That was the big theme of last year with Leinster, and so they couldn't find a way to hurt the Bulls in return. It was a kind of a complete victory with le Roux really pulling strings. So what are Leinster going to do about Willie le Roux on Saturday?
Look, if you're playing the rush defence and you're backing to trap them before the ball gets out there, you're looking at it to stop the ball before he even gets his hands on it. And we saw, look, for the first try that Glasgow got at the weekend, they found a way to get outside that Leinster rush defence.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it looks quite easy. You're kind of going, oh, geez, that was nearly a walk-in. But there's no one left to defend. The whole defensive strategy is to shut them down and prevent the ball getting there. It's not the discussion isn't, when the ball gets there, how can we scramble and save it? The number one focus is stopping it getting there. So, look, the Bulls will have a strategy probably around tightening up their shapes and getting their depth and alignment right. And you'll look at teams over the course of this season that have been able to break Leinster down. You've got to do it quickly. Typically within the first 4 or 5 phases. Once it goes past that, Leinster slow your ruck speed down, and then they get off the line. You're not going to break that Leinster defence down that way. But the success that Bath had at the start of the Champions Cup game and the success that the Saints had, you've got to strike and strike quickly and strike with like hard lines or really accurate passing. So that's going to be their focus, and they'll give it a go for 2-3 phases, maybe 4, and then boom, they'll kick it, regardless of where they are in the field.
I also felt they were very comfortable with a rush defence, as in it's a really popular defence in South Africa, and so Willie le Roux was like, please, that's cute and everything that you're doing this now, but like I've grown up against this. I'm not scared back here. We're fine.
Yeah, and then you couple that with the actual individual skill set that this guy has. Like, how can you unlock the other elements? Like, really good hand speed is because you want to draw them up. Think that they're going to get you man and ball. Boom, goes through your hands. His hand speed is electric. It's the best I've ever seen. And
oh, really?
Yeah, he like at speed running onto the ball, as good as I've seen. His ability to catch and pass in one movement without taking anything out of it makes him really difficult. Like,
that's a scary thing if you're told rush up on him.
Yeah, it is. It's like a skimming stone is how I describe it when it goes through his hand. It's as efficient as I've seen. And then he's such an array in his kicking game. His ability to, obviously he's got the big ball where he can go long, he can go crossfield kick. He's got a lovely grubber game where again, you're trying to draw up that last defender, thinking, right, we're going to get a man and ball, or we're going to shut the guy outside him. He drops it on his foot, treads it through,
Yeah.
and before you know it, it's a foot race with the likes of Caelan Moody.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm a conservative type. I know you love this type of defence, up and at him and pressure on. I just don't like it. It's too risky for me. It's like all or nothing. So many missed tackles. Someone, like, fair enough against lesser teams, they'll be overwhelmed by it and the defence looks amazing. But I just think someone like Le Roux and that Bulls team last year, and maybe Leinster are much better at it now, but they were like, look, we can live with this and actually we can expose it so badly. And then I think like Leinster gets spooked and it's like, what, this isn't working. And you know, they shoot up, and as you said, it's like it just looks kamikaze-like at times when it goes wrong. And I feel sometimes they're not almost confident enough within the system, Leinster, to be like, oh, we're being reeled in here. Everyone put on the brakes a second. I still think they're in that mode of like, no, Jacques says I have to squeeze up, so I'm squeezing up. Even though something tells me this isn't the right thing to do. I feel like in the big games, Leinster's still in that phase with it.
I'd agree with that final part, and like that's the area of growth, and like Jacques will know that. Like, so he, it took a bit of time for him to implement it, and in the middle of this season, I thought it was really purring, and then it definitely fell away a little bit, and then I think it's coming back to where he wants it to get to at the moment. You hit the nail on the head there. It's like, you can't simply just get off the line and go hard every time, because if the team gets gain line success and gets quick ruck ball and you're back, you could be backpedaling, but another player may have adjusted quicker and they've got set. Then you've got like multiple dog legs in your defence, and that's when good quality halfbacks or centre players can really pick you off. And that's the area of growth. It's knowing when to go really hard and shut them down, but also having the awareness of going, now's not the right time. Get a call in, go, we're just staying connected for this one, we'll get them on the next one. But the reason why I like it, Joe, is like, I'm thinking, how are we going to win a World Cup? How are we going to win the Champions Cup? And it's like, can your defence be your point of difference? And when I see that system working, it is so effective. And I think in Ireland, we're slightly conditioned to be like, oh, missed tackles, bad defence. Okay? Leinster have missed, I think, either the most or the second most tackles than any other team in the URC. But they have conceded the least amount of gain line success. That's a stat that doesn't really make sense. Okay, so they're missing tackles, but the opposition are not getting over the gain line. It's because the missed tackles are being made so far behind the gain line. And then Leinster are so aware that, yes, we are rushing. There may be missed tackles. How are we going to scramble these missed tackles? And I don't want to cover Prendergast. In the second half of the season, his defence simply hasn't been good enough. But there is an element of him getting up really high, leading the defence. Look, maybe he falls off the tackle, but it's so far behind the gain line that you've got your inside centre and your flanker inside and outside him, that they can cover it. In an ideal world, he makes that tackle and he creates a poach opportunity.
Yeah.
So there's still big areas of growth within that Leinster defence.
Is there enough of a safety net with it? Like, in football terms, we would talk about a team playing out from the back, and the opposition, call them Leinster in this instance, are putting huge press on. And if that team break that first line of the press, they're in. Yeah. And we're away. And that's where I sort of feel Leinster in certain big games, Bulls last year, I feel like they can also concede a try out of nothing. It's like quick hands here, quick hands there, and like they're out on the flanks and gone. Yeah, and that's the worry with them at times.
Yeah, and that's where, like, can the team that you're playing against plant a seed of doubt? And Northampton did that. They planted that seed of doubt, and then, like someone like Gary Ringrose is going, I know the system, I'm still looking to go forward. And then other players are going, well, look, we've already conceded a couple here. Maybe we should just go with a bit more of a conservative defence. And then more dog legs are being created. Someone like Finn Smith senses that, and he's like, we can start picking these guys off here.
Yeah, and I feel a lot of the Irish guys did not grow up with the rush defence. So there's an instinct kicks in some of them,
Yeah, and like even like Joe Schmidt's system, who still would have coached a lot of the guys, was more the Glasgow system of staying connected, stay controlled, force the opposition to make mistakes. When it goes into the wide areas of the pitch, let's contest the breakdown really hard. That will give give us time to get set, and that's the time that we look to go hard. But when it's rucks in the middle of the field, Joe was very much, let's control the opposition. But the game's moved on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll bow to your knowledge.
Well, look, I that's my view on it. But it was fascinating going into that Leinster game at the weekend against Glasgow, and it were two very different defensive styles.
Yes.
Leinster are all about dominant tackles, getting off the line. Glasgow are all about staying connected, and happy to let the opposition attack for multiple phases, tire themselves out. And I'm not saying that there were people saying that Glasgow were going to win, but they thought it was going to be very, very close. And Leinster blew them away. And a large part of that was founded in that defence. There was no really good attacking passages of play until the game was over from Glasgow.
Yeah. Scrum is obviously of significance. We should just flag that. They're the two best scrums in the league all year. So that is one to watch. Jimmy O'Brien was full back in that game last year against the Bulls.
Yeah.
So how much of all that space in the flanks and those kicks in behind were on him, and how much just on the failings elsewhere?
Yeah, it was a tough game for Jimmy last year. I think part of the strategy from Leinster was to play the wingers really high.
Yeah.
And he was left roaming.
You just covered that 60 yards there, Jimmy.
Yeah. And then I thought Leinster got their kick strategy wrong in that game.
Right.
There was times when I was like, this needs to go off the pitch, and they would go long. And when you're playing against someone like Willie le Roux, and you make a poor decision like that, he knows exactly what to do. He's like, right, now's the time. Every player's in front of that person who made the kick. We're going to counter attack here, and it's going to be be very impactful, and it certainly was. Jimmy's a fascinating one. Like I've been a big fan of him. I saw him coming through school, and then as an under-20s player, and like the impact that he made off the bench in the New Zealand game. He came off, I think it was down the left touchline. And for like 20, 25 minutes, he had such a big impact on it. And I was thinking, right, this guy's going to really kick on now next year. And then the following season, he got a nasty neck injury. And I don't know like the full intricacies of it, but it was serious enough to keep him out for a few months. And neck injuries are funny. They can affect your confidence. You can become a bit gun shy, both sides of the ball, whether you're carrying, whether you're tackling, high ball stuff for back three guys. And then his season this year, like, it was only until like a few weeks ago I was thinking, oh, it's been a bit of a disappointing season for him. I wasn't sure. And I was going through his individual stats. And like he's carried for the most metres. He's made the most line breaks for Leinster. And it was the Scarlets game I was thinking, oh, he's going to really kick on here again. He was okay. He was very, very good against Glasgow. And I'm really excited to see him in this final, and I think he can be a big part of Ireland in this World Cup cycle and the next one. He's got speed, he's good aerially, he's a good ball player, and yeah, I was delighted to see him because he's had a tough run of it since that World Cup, and it'd be great to see him forge back into that Irish team.
Yeah. As is his lot in life, Sam Prendergast has been talked about a lot at the moment. So really good left wing yesterday, worth checking out in your feed. Luke Fitzgerald took no joy in saying he would not start Sam Prendergast. And even, what about the damage that might do to him and his confidence? He was like, look, there's no room for sentiment. There's a squad of 50 people. You have a responsibility to them. We'll deal with Sam's disappointment in the pre-season. He's like, it's the two primary reasons, without simplifying his message overly. The kicking at the moment, for a lovely kicker, it's deserted him a touch, 11 points left behind on Saturday. And then the defence is obviously not getting better and may even be getting worse, is a feeling. And the Bulls will not need to be asked twice. And therefore, take your pick, Frawley, Ross Byrne, whichever. He just thought that was the way to go. Where do you want to start on Prendergast?
Yeah, like Lukey, fascinating guy to share the dressing room with, and love playing with him. And I listened to the left wing quite a bit, and he made it clear. He's like, I'll always pick the guy who defends better first off, and Luke made that clear to you when you were playing alongside him. Let's not worry about any of the fancy stuff. Get our D right, and we'll go from there. And he was talking about the different kind of slagging you get in the Leinster dressing room. Like, if you're not making your tackles, pipe down and go to work on your tackle technique, work with your defence coach, players around you, produce it at the week, and then you can come back and have the crack with us. I'm sure that large parts of that culture are still there in Leinster. It was interesting when I heard Bernard Jackman talking about it, and he was saying they need to strip the whole technique down with Prendergast and build it back up. And when I heard that, I was like, you know what, he's actually right, because there's fundamentals in Sam's tackle technique that I'm thinking he's not doing well enough. But they're easy wins, like simple ones. Like he's getting himself into pretty good positions, but his grab in the tackle is not sufficient enough. And players are able to ride the tackle, keep their feet, and then power on past them.
And that looks awful.
It does look awful, and he's done the hard bit. The hardest bit is getting into a good position. And like, bear in mind, this guy's 6'4". Like, so the body positions he's got to get into are very different for, me, who's 6 inches shorter than, which makes all the difference when you're making a tackle. The ability for players to fend you, to drop their weight fully on you, and bosh you. There's way more to aim at, and just the simple physiological element of it. So his bite in the tackle, how he's using the players inside and outside of him, I think could be better as well. And that's like, are you going to do that all this week? No, you'll definitely do some tackle technique, but you don't want to pile a load of stuff onto a player and then go, right, and now we're going to sort out your goal kicking. You're going to go, look, if we make a couple of tweaks here, but come next pre-season. And then there's also like the gym element of it. Like, bite in a tackle comes down to chest strength, shoulder strength, your power in your legs, the initial impact that you can make. Because if your initial impact is good and then your bite is strong, you can go from someone who making 60% of your tackles suddenly to 80%. So look, he is so young, but that is an area of concern. And look, the Bulls are going to target him big time. On the kicking side of it.
And can I just ask,
sorry.
No, it's great. So when they're going to target him, he knows that, Leinster know that. What plan do you make around him to allow for the fact, look, he's not pretending he's the world's greatest tackler. There's going to be issues there and a lot of traffic. Is that as simple as Josh, Ryan, stay tight to him? Is that just all you can do?
The biggest thing for me is he's got to get up and get ahead of the defensive line.
Okay, so if he misses a tackle, then it's not disastrous.
There's people waiting in behind.
Yeah, fair enough.
If you don't keep your speed up at the players inside and outside, you add a minimum, or if you drop behind. If you drop behind,
they're going at you.
And they get over the top of you. There's nothing there to stop you. And I think...
So that's a zero talent thing, I suppose, in that the message, the simple, let's not overload them this week, as you rightly say. Yeah. The simple message could be, get out in front of everyone, do your damnedest, and we try cover you. But if you're hanging back, unacceptable.
Correct. Yeah, like it's like the first man over the trenches.
Yeah.
And in fairness...
Speed bump at worst.
Yeah, and a big... an area of his defence that is actually really good, that it is a skill that isn't spoken about a huge amount, is your ability to get out of the block. So if it's coming off a line out, you're onside once the ball's released from the second row's hand, for example.
Yeah.
Right? Some players miss the jump, or they can be a bit casual with it. He is always set in the blocks, anticipating it, and he gets off the line seriously hard, where quite often he'll get up past where the line out was, and then the missed tackle happens, short of the gain line, and then there's players there.
So that's something, if I'm watching the game on Saturday, or any of the listeners are, and we see a line out and we see Sam first up and he misses a tackle, and you're inclined to go, bloody hell. Yeah. Let's pause for a second and say he was first up, as he was probably asked to do. He slowed down the ball carrier a little bit. Might have done better, but let's be fair.
Yep.
It's not as horrific and damaging to the team as it looks, because it's very eye-catching.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. And it comes down to that. How much is he getting on them? Like, how much is he slowing them down?
Can't forgive a flailing arm. Has to be something.
No, can't be traffic warden stuff.
And then pre-season, build it up from the
start
over.
And it's like working with Sean O'Brien on the different types of tackles that he can do. Prit stick, pulling guys over you, when to go high and try and hold them up for a maul, when to chop them from the side, how to manage like big ball carriers coming straight at you.
Yes. It's like a golf shot reading different lies. Sorry, I'm watching the US Open this morning. you got to pick a tackle to suit the angle and the ball carrier and the dynamics of that situation. Choosing your shot is key. Choosing your tackle is key.
That's a huge part of it. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. That's one minor thing for Sam to fix. The kicking then, so you no better man.
Yeah, like I was in the stadium, so I was able to see him warming up and his kicks in the game. staying with the golf analogy, like a simple one is like, are you keeping your head down? Like anyone who starts off playing golf, everyone lifts their head. It's the main thing that you'll hear people saying, keep your head down. But everyone wants to see where the ball's going. No different with a place kicker. You want to see the ball going through the posts. But when I was kicking well, I wouldn't even have to look sometimes. I just go, this is the angle that I'm coming in at. If I get the strike that I know I can, and I feel that strike on my foot, I don't have to look at the post. I know it is going clean through. And like we'd have a bit of fun with that, like in the competitions midweek. I'm looking at Sam, his head's popping up quickly. And Luke actually touched on it, and Luke was a very good goal kicker himself. He was saying what's concerning for him is, he's missing right and left. And then the distance between those misses is significant. If the width of the post is 6 meters, and he's missing to the right by 3 meters, and he's missing to the left by 5 meters.
Big dispersion rate.
The dispersion there. And that's, like, we will see this come into rugby more. It's not quite there yet. But talking about shot shape, are you hitting a fade or draw? If you miss right, how much are you missing by? How quickly can you correct it? That's all the stuff that golfers are talking about. And for me, Sam is, I think that I've mentioned it before, the kicking tee that he's using, he's 6'4". The ball is really low to the ground. The sweet spot is hard to get at. I think he's suited to using a higher kicking tee and a more sweeping motion. He's an amazing striker of the ball out of hand. It should transfer into his goal kicking, but it doesn't. And the ball is turning over quickly. Even there was one that hit the post, and I'm kind of going, how is that ball so high up the post when his last kick was way lower? And when your kicks aren't going particularly well, Joe, you're not going, I'm going to hit a high one here, I'm going to hit a low one here, I'm going to hit a fade, I'm going to hit a draw. You're going to go back to your reliable shape, and there's going to be nothing fancy about it.
And does he have a go-to shot?
I don't think so at the moment.
Yeah.
I don't think so at the moment.
That's a really... I don't want to keep harping on about his age. If you're wearing the jersey, you got to be scrutinised like everyone else. But you would know, ahead of a big final, all the scrutiny, and he knows deep down the kicking's not quite there, and I don't have the go-to shot I want. These are tough, sleepless nights. That's a lot on his plate there.
Yeah, and
would you take it off him? Would you say to Geordie, up you go?
Yeah, I would personally. Yeah, and I think while Sam would want to do it, and you might fight it a little bit, once the decision's made, there's probably a bit of relief with that. Yeah. And I think the goal kicking's funny. Like I remember, and there's such a weighting on it as an out half, in the sense that you can play pretty average goal kick, 6 from 6, 8 from 8, come in and go, Ian played.
Yeah, he was good, wasn't he?
He was pretty good.
Yeah.
And you could also, I've had a few games where I've actually played pretty well, goal kick poorly, and people are coming in, Ian, he's poor. I wonder will they play him again next week. So it is fickle in that sense, but taking that off him and allowing him just to focus on running the game, getting up, and doing his bits defensively, I think it'd be fine.
And as a 10, you wouldn't find it a little bit embarrassing and therefore affects your confidence overly in general play?
Yeah, it can do. Yeah, it can do. It is definitely a bit of an
tricky. It's delicate.
Yeah, but at the same time, like the numbers don't lie. No. It's just like a salesman saying, I think I can do better. Well, look, this is your number. Your target was 100 and you've only hit 50, so it's coming off you. Yeah. This is business.
Yeah.
So, I've been in that position with Sam before, where like you're not overly reliant on your shape, and like you're aiming down the middle of the posts, and you're not too sure if it's going to be a left to right or right to left, or if the ball's going to go straight. If you miss fractionally there, it's going to miss for you.
Like if you don't know your shot shape, you're in so much trouble. Because as you said, it'll double the length of the target.
Correct.
The width of the target.
Yeah.
What is his more prevalent? He's a pretty straight kicker.
Yeah, I like Johnny tried to kick it straight and was very good at it.
Yeah.
It's I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, and I've watched plenty of them. So he will figure it out though. Like he's got the hard part. It's like again a golfer who's got great swing speed. Like there's lots to work with here. Like he strikes a spiral and a punt kick, and his accuracy with his line kicking is amazing.
So it's frustrating. The higher tee thing is interesting. I mean, I'm sure there's enough expertise around him. Somebody will have suggested that to him, I would hope, or they'll be talking about the tee and these kind of basics.
Yeah, and that's where like this isn't the week to pull out the high tee and go, right, I've changed it. I'm
going with a new driver.
Yeah, not the week. So, But yeah, again, pre-season. You know, he's 21, 22.
Yeah.
Pre-season's going to be great for Sam. I hope he gets a long one.
And I hope it's not a painful few weeks after Saturday for him, because this feels like a really pivotal game for him. Goes well, they win. Okay, ship has been steadied. Goes badly for him. It's difficult, because I was talking to somebody, I don't want to identify them, played professional rugby, knows Leinster inside out, former player, and he was strongly of the opinion that Prendergast has been rushed prematurely and it's been wrong. And he thinks in November there's a big difference in coming off the bench for 20, 25 minutes and all the goodwill that goes with that. And boy, the kid has talent, doesn't he? There's lots of potential there. A few things to work on, but isn't he great? As opposed to, he's starting his defence. Why is he starting against Jack? So that Andy Farrell instigated this like almost culture war, and that was a lot. And then by dint of picking Prendergast for Ireland, puts huge pressure on Leinster to pick him. And then Leinster probably thinking, geez, he was right about Gibson Park, Farrell. Maybe he's right about Farrell. Or maybe he's right about Prendergast. So then suddenly he's in there ahead of everyone, and like Frawley's thrown to the, just see you. Like
he's not in the 23
we
this
haven't
week.
seen him.
It speaks for itself. Yeah.
So Frawley gone. Ross Byrne leaving the club, and you know, plays some games, but like almost left themselves in a position as the season went on that the only out half they'd given enough minutes to, or in kind of form for these big games, is Prendergast. And unfortunately, his form has nosedived, the Northampton game, etc. And they've been left with no choice here but to shove him back in there. And so now, and you can draw the line back to November, you find yourself ahead of a final, and you're shoving in a guy whose defence is very suspect against the Bulls, whose kicking has completely gone off the radar, who looks fatigued, and whose confidence must be a little bit shot. And out you go. Yeah. So it's been... And sorry, that person, he laid it all out for me, and he said this has been wrongly handled, and I couldn't but agree with him, and I don't know why. I mean, I feel ultimately it's we need to get someone ready for 2027, and Prendergast was identified, and therefore come hell or high water, in you go, and it's this World Cup obsession, you know. And I think it's a really. Boys made the point on the left wing. Interesting, wasn't taken on the lines. Irish head coach, so many Irish players. I think a good chat over the summer about how this has been handled is worthwhile for the powers that be in Irish rugby, you know, and see where he is himself.
Yeah, and it got to this stage, you touched on it there, where like Leinster had to keep picking him, otherwise it's the headline that week. Prendergast dropped. Coupled with that is like his actual makeup as being a 6'4" guy who's pretty slight, playing in the control room of out half. You need to manage that even more so, because physically he's been targeted for large parts of the season, and I definitely think they could have done that better. Even like this summer tour coming up, like you'll ask him, you know, Sam, do you want a break or do you want to go? He's obviously going to say he wants to go, but when we get to the Six Nations next year, will a rest now serve him well for then? That's how I'd be looking at it. And a full pre-season where he can get a break. And like he's been the centre of attention week in, week out. And that takes his toll. I'm sure he's, you know, I know his agent well, Dave McHugh, and he's really well managed. He's a really level head on his shoulders. Like there's no ego with Sam at all. Like top quality guy. And he's surrounded by obviously his brother Cian, his parents, really good friend group, etc. But no matter what, it takes its toll on you. When you're going out, you're getting your pint of milk in the morning. You're bumping into people non-stop, right? You're surrounded by it. You're going to see it subconsciously or not, and that takes its toll on you. And I remember being just exhausted at the end of my breakthrough season, and I played half the rugby that Sam had played, and not as big games.
And you weren't at the centre of a major debate, which is toxic in many ways. And I guarantee you, he's 22 years old. He is putting his name into search engines. There's nothing surer. He's seen it all. Yeah. Nothing surer. And that is just draining. So as this season has gone on, I felt just sorry for him increasingly, you know?
Yeah, and it's frustrating because you don't want to be coming on and like having to like feel like you've got to protect him either. But like you've got to bring to life the bigger picture as well.
Yeah, no, I'm coming from the point of view, we want this guy at 25 to be bulletproof, rock solid, not like chipped away at by this experience.
And that's the thing, when you break in professionally as like a 19, 20, 21-year-old, it's not as easy as it might seem to continue to develop. You're into that week-to-week cycle. It's professional rugby. Jobs are on the line.
Yes.
Coaches are under pressure. Players are under pressure, both to get results and to keep contracts.
Yes. So we're going to rip up your kicking technique. Well, we're not doing it this week because you're playing on Saturday.
Yeah. Or, look, in your running technique, I need you to lift your knee and get your ribs down, and this is the hip tuck that we want you to do. That kind of goes out the window when you've lost 3 in a row and the coach's job is on the line here. Or we're going to trial this new tee for this week. Well, you're playing again. Let's not trial anything new. Yeah. Let's just try and figure it out with what we've got. And I think this is an important preseason for him coming up. And I hope that he gets a good break. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. What else about this game do you want to mention to round it off?
Look, it's really exciting. Like going into Croke Park, like, you know, seeing Jack Conan walking up the Hogan stand and lifting the trophy, that would be pretty special.
I'm surprised by the. I know 40,000 is really good. It's really good, but like, it's 55,000 turned up to watch them hockey Harlequins.
I know.
It is a final, and yet it's just you can't convince people. But there you go. 40,000 again. It's still really good. It's just the stadium's so bloody big.
Yeah, look, it's a big stadium. We're into Gaelic season time. Like, you know, Irish people, you know, they'll support the hurling and the GAA and
Dubs play that evening, big game.
Yeah, and that's like in a wider conversation, I still think there should be URC games played during the autumn internationals in the Six Nations, because that gives younger guys more of an opportunity to play, and it means that we can shorten up the season. The way the season flows out, like having the Champions Cup, you know, finishes up when it does. I always think that should be later in the season.
Yeah. It should be the last game. Yeah,
it really should. Now, obviously, it's difficult with the likes of the top 14 in the Premiership trying to align all 3 leagues. But you know, to go back on what I said on like, has this been a successful season for Leinster? They've lost 3 games. Hopefully, they win at the weekend, and it stays that way. They win the URC. They dominated large parts of Europe. They've had, you know, a record number of home knockout games, you know, the whole way through, which has a, you know, big financial impact onto next season and the following season. It has been a successful year.
Disagree.
Yeah, I know, and it's so harsh to be measured, like, and
not just because of the bare stats of 3 games, the manner of the Northampton defeat.
I know, but
I would class last year, if they won the URC last year and lost the way they did against Toulouse. Do you know what? Unbelievable effort. Can't win them all. Successful season. This season, you can't have Jordy Barrett on the bench. I'm not going through that game again.
No. I know.
You can't have that performance and call it successful. It's too. It was. They didn't lose by 1. They just on the key moment.
No, and on the like Champions Cup, as regards opportunity to win it with the injury crisis Toulouse had, and you know, Bordeaux not having experience going into the final. Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the full season here. Like, you can get lost in that. Like, you can easily forget that, you know, all the homegrown Leinster young players going over and beating a star-studded Sharks team. Like, there's different small elements within a season. How many academy players have come through? I think there's enough success points in that if they do win at the weekend and they taste that silverware and it motivates them to win the Champions Cup next year, I think they'll look back in 2025 and go,
oh, well, hang on. That's a hell of a thing to throw in as part of your... And this is the impetus for them to win the Champions Cup next season. Well, hang on. Just dangling that out. It's like a bill in the American legislature. You're just attaching that little bill underneath.
I don't know. Maybe I'm getting the Joe McCarthy vibes of, you know, everyone hates Leinster. Now, I'd like to think I'm a bit more level-headed. But look, they're in the final this week, and I'm going to... They're my team, and I'm going to get behind them. So.
Oh, listen, for sure. And I think, you know, Rory on Monday was making the point, like, Irish rugby needs this, you know, like, what do we want? You're talking about Prendergast into next season. Say all these Irish players come off the back of a trophyless season again, lines might go so. I mean, you're picking up the pieces a bit into next season. Like, you want them.
Irish rugby needs a win.
Yeah.
Big time.
I think
big
so
time.
too.
Yeah, it was interesting even hearing some of the South African ex-internationals talking about it, and, you know, they're masters with the media themselves, and that feeds into the Bulls team, saying, "Oh, Leinster should be winning the double every single year. Like, there's no excuses." And I certainly wouldn't agree with that. But like, they love leaning into, "Oh, we've never got past a quarter final. Leinster haven't won the Champions Cup in so long." Yeah, so that, like, when I'm watching those videos on Instagram, I'm just going, "I hope we stuffed them at the weekend."
Well, it's just so interesting, and I think your point about Leinster all season and it being a successful season, like in league terms, like it's phenomenal, but it just shows. I thought the way Jake White set up the final, which is for 4 months, and this is probably how other teams see Leinster. For 4 months, we've known with their squad, like, it's not even a fair fight in a league basis. They're going to be top. We're going to have to go there.
Yeah.
But they circled that one in the calendar. Knockout, Leinster. There's a frailty there. That's what's so interesting about this. And is it a successful season if Leinster win? It's, debatable kind of point. Depends on your feeling. But they just can't lose. It's just horrific for everyone. Where do they go? They lose that. Management get together in August. Right, guys, we go again. Really hard. Like, they went to Nienaber, which was kind of a new direction, and I'm sure that was a kind of fresh impetus. But it's really, they just have to. They just can't lose. Is my point. Nice for them to win, and it'll be yay and lap of honor and hug and stand and everything. But the actual important part is just don't lose. Don't lose another final. Don't lose another knockout game.
Yeah,
which is a very grim way to look at it.
It is, and the players will feel that pressure.
Yeah,
and even like being in the stadium early for the Glasgow game, you could cut the tension with a knife.
Really?
It was tense. It was tense, and even like how the media was managed post the Scarlets game, leading into the Glasgow game, there was a different vibe around Leinster. They weren't quite controlling the narrative the way they quite often do.
Yeah. When Glasgow even scored that first try early on, I thought, "Oh my God!"
Yeah,
the silence in the stadium.
Yeah, so when they bounce back, you're thinking, "Oh, is it going to be another one of those days?" That looked pretty easy.
Yeah,
but now, even the way Leinster bounced back from that, it was impressive. It was a not a total complete performance, but it was a very, very good performance. It was very hard to pluck holes in it.
So all of that mixed together, you seemed reasonably confident at the top of a Leinster win. I haven't managed to chip away at your confidence there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more of an arm wrestle than we saw at the weekend. I think we'll get to half time. Both teams will have taken a good few chunks out of each other. It's Leinster's ability to get their ball carriers onto the ball, keep the ball, play it in the right areas, grind the Bulls down. And I just don't think they're going to give the Bulls the opportunity on those turnovers where they can be a bit more clinical than the likes of Glasgow were. And then, look, the kicking game is going to be a big part of it. That was probably their biggest learning from the semi-final last year. Leinster kicked the most, more than any other team in the league, and they kick for the most metres. And they've got a lot of variance in their kicking game. Obviously, Gibson Park and Prendergast hit the long ball particularly well, but they vary it up with chip kicks, the contestable kicks. They've got two great wingers in Tommy and Lowy going up and competing for those high balls. So it's going to be a real contest there. It's going to be a measured performance from Leinster, but you couple that with the ball carriers they have across 1 to 15, I think that's where they're going to have the edge on the Bulls.
Okay, interesting. Because funny, people are saying the Bulls have the edge physically, I'm hearing, but you think Leinster ball carriers?
I think when you look at the likes of, Sheehan, Barrett, Joe McCarthy and Ryan are playing brilliant stuff in the second row. I've been really impressed with Barrett over the last few weeks. He's really stepped up. I think we've got better ball carriers across the board, and more firepower coming off the bench. Having the likes of Snyman and Slimani, some good quality players there. If it is in an arm wrestle, these guys will be ready more so than they were maybe coming off the bench again in the Saints game.
Okay.